There once was a storm, fierce and wild, that battered a small town on the edge of the sea. Winds howled like angry beasts. Trees bent until their branches snapped. Rooftops rattled, windows shuddered. In one little house near the hillside, a young boy sat huddled under a thick old blanket, his heart pounding. It was only a blanket, thin against the fury outside, but somehow, underneath it, he imagined he was hidden inside a mighty fortress, safe, untouchable. Years later, that boy would remember that feeling when he first heard the words, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." The secret place. It was not a place marked on any map, nor hidden among the hills or behind ancient doors. It was an invisible refuge, real enough to shield a soul, even as the world around it crumbled. In a land where fear roamed the streets, where unseen diseases crept through the air, and unseen enemies plotted in the dark, those who found the secret place walked unshaken. For them, it was as if the storms could howl all they wanted, but their feet stood on a rock that could not be moved. One such traveler, an old warrior of faith, lived by a simple truth. He spoke aloud, often under his breath, sometimes in the silence of his heart, sometimes in the hearing of others. "The Lord is my refuge and my fortress." The words became his shield. Each day, arrows would fly. Not the kind made of wood and stone, but accusations, fears, doubts, sickness, and still he would walk through them as if invisible, the promises of the Almighty wrapping around him like a cloak. Many wondered about him. How did he survive when others fell? Why was his house still standing when the winds had taken so many others? The old warrior would simply smile, remembering the ancient words. "Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence." He remembered a time when he almost stumbled into a trap. It was cleverly hidden, masked by charm and ambition. Had he followed his own wisdom, he would have been caught. But something unseen nudged his heart, a whisper steering him another way. Later he would learn it was a snare meant for his ruin, and the voice had been the hand of his protector. There were darker days too, nights when an invisible pestilence crept through the city like a shadow, stealing breath and life from thousands. He watched as friends, neighbors, even leaders fell one by one. And yet, somehow, he remained, not untouched by grief, but preserved from destruction. He would think of the words, "1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you." There were moments it felt almost unreal, to stand while so many others fell. But he knew the secret was not his strength, not his cunning, not even his prayers. It was the shadow under which he lived, the shadow of the Almighty. There was a night he would never forget. It was on a distant island where he had traveled to bring good news to a people hostile to strangers. He and his wife lived in a fragile hut with walls so thin they could hear every sound outside. And one night footsteps gathered, dozens, maybe hundreds. Whispers filled the air. The glint of torches and weapons flashed between the cracks of their door. He and his wife knelt together, trembling but praying, whispering promises back to God. Years later, when the fierce warriors who once threatened them became brothers in faith, they confessed. They had seen figures, tall, mighty beings dressed in brilliant armor, standing around the hut with drawn swords. They had been afraid to attack. The old man would smile whenever he remembered the words. "For he shall give his angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways." I wore on, wrinkles carved deeper into his skin. His hair turned white like the snow that crowned the distant mountains. But he never left the secret place. He never forgot where home was. Not a building of bricks and wood, but the everlasting arms that carried him through every season. In the quiet of his last days, he would often sit by his window at sunset, watching the light melt over the hills, and whisper, "Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him." He had set his love upon a God he could not see, but whose presence was more real to him than anything else. And in return, the promises had held true. Deliverance, protection, long life, salvation. The storms had come and gone. The enemies had risen and fallen. The pestilence had swept through cities like wildfire. But he had lived his days under the wings of the Almighty. And when the final storm came, the storm that no one could outrun, he was not afraid. For he knew the same arms that had shielded him in life would carry him beyond death into a secret place even more beautiful than he had ever imagined. The secret place of the Most High, the shadow of the Almighty, the everlasting refuge that can never be shaken. I am Brother John. Please, fellow believers, share your insights about this.